Let's talk about Best Dressed first, though. Best Dressed is a YouTube channel run by a young woman by the name of Ashley. Ashley is a mixed race Asian American white woman, young woman, but I believe she's 22 years old. She lives in New York City. She used to live in Los Angeles and moved to NYC. And she primarily takes interest, as her name would describe, in sort of attire. Hey Barnes says, I watched Best Dressed at like 250k subs, and I just feel like she has changed so much since she blew up. Her last video was incredibly tone deaf. Yeah, tone deaf is basically the term that people are using to describe it. It comes off as tone deaf to a lot of people because of the serious nature of the pandemic that I don't think anybody should need to describe. I haven't personally watched the video, but I have seen the comments, and I'm very interested by it because I'm generally a person that thinks this channel is pretty cool, and I think this young woman comes off very cool. And if there's an interesting conversation to have, or where we can talk critically about different issues that maybe we can all learn about, then we can all grow, and that's a positive thing. But let's see this video ourselves and give our own takes on how the video comes off, and then we'll read the comments and sort of go from there.
Hey, how are you? It's been a while since we caught up. Oh, me? What have I been up to? I might talk your ear off. Okay, if you insist. It's not like I have a 4-page voiceover prepared about the past few months or anything. When I moved to New York in February, I came here with the bulletproof sense of purpose usually reserved for college freshmen and superheroes. Ever narrativizing my own life, I was sure I was entering a new and improved chapter. New? Definitely. Improved? Well, spoiler alert, but you already know what happens next. I spent what was supposed to be 2 weeks and slowly bled into 2 months without a single living creature, save the cockroaches I discovered in my apartment. In July, I witnessed the city sputter back to life. The first day I got to work outside at a coffee shop, I could have fucking cried. And for once, not just because I paid $7 for glorified bean water. The strange thing is, I know the city once held millions more people on its streets, but I honestly can't.
There were some people who are feeling kind of uncomfortable about her taking these shots of like strangers on the street of New York, like doing their thing. One can kind of assume that she didn't get their permission to do that because they seem like kind of intimate moments. Of course, you can't necessarily know that, but it doesn't help that she doesn't give a disclaimer, so you can kind of just like assume that. Karina says that she hates the background music.
Abby, who I'd only just met once in February when I first moved to New York,
So people are a little bit, let's just say people were a little bit uncomfortable with that particular scene, in that there's a bunch of people in a picnic in a park that are not wearing masks, and she's blowing on a birthday cake, and this is a disease that is carried in the air, so in terms of COVID-19, so it came off to people as a little bit dangerous. As somebody who's gone out a couple of times and probably kind of regrets it at this point, it's a tricky thing to navigate, because if you and all your friends are pretty sure that you're testing negative and stuff like that, and you're taking through these different precautions, one can understand why you would then, go to the park and just hang out, take your masks off temporarily, hang out, put your mask back on and leave, which I'm assuming was what was done here. But the blowing of the birthday candles is a little bit it's just in terms of the optics, it can kind of communicate some strange things. So I can see why people have their criticisms of that. And I don't know. I think that she probably took some precautions that her friends did, but I hear there's also some tea behind the scenes of that. Won't get into that too, so we'll just kind of leave that be. And I just wanted to note that kind of situation.
So I've been thinking about moving lately. First thing in the morning and last thing at night, I reload Zillow until I find the perfect apartment that I can imagine the perfect life in. Ooh, there I'd have enough space to paint. There I could get a dog.
I don't necessarily know if she's particularly encouraging this behavior. We know that it's pretty clear from even just this video that she's quite self-deprecating and often critiques herself. But she just moved to New York City. So the fact that after a pandemic and things got a little bit rocky, she's already contemplating this like moving process to some, ideal other place. It's a little frustrating, because that's not healthy, first of all. And, you know, second of all, there's just like a lot of context of people in cities like New York City, but especially in New York City, that come from outside, that are upper middle class and young, and come to New York City seeking like adventure and like this ideal setup, and then kind of scoff at the ways in which things are not quite as idyllic as they thought they were going to be. And I'm not necessarily saying that that is Ashley in this case, but when you are a native New Yorker, like a lot of people who have watched this video are, including myself, these kinds of ideas and images come to mind. And so for her to be talking about moving again just kind of reinforces that a little bit in a way that, you know, kind of disappoints me. But again, it's a bit of a burdensome thing to ply of her, because she's not necessarily justifying that. And I think that to some degree she probably knows, as she talks about this, that this is this silly idyllic thing that isn't actually very helpful. But yeah, you know, it is a video that is quite centered on her own experiences and her own, you know, feeling down about not being able to see her friends and throwing a party with her friends and all this other stuff. And there is this sense, you're right, Ro, about how she's kind of talking about the pandemic as if it had ended or something. And then, you know, in July came and things started opening up again, and I was so relieved to go to the coffee shop and stuff like that. Whereas these, you know, situations with this disease make it so that it's quite dangerous, and the people who work in these restaurants and these stores, their, you know, immune systems are being compromised, their livelihoods are being compromised, and they're not being compensated very well. So there's a very dark, obvious reality to it that makes it so that when it's depicted in this video as being like this sort of celebratory, happy moment, you know, oh, we get to go to the coffee shop again and have a little party and stuff, it comes off a bit dismissive of that dark reality. That's how it comes off again. And, you know, this is not me trying to criticize people's character. I'm just sort of pointing out these different things in this video that alarm people. And, you know, I guess it's up to each individual person how much the veracity there is to that.
Maybe life isn't easy anywhere right now. Maybe life isn't easy anywhere, ever. But maybe life doesn't have to cost $2,000 fucking dollars a month for a 10 by 10 box at least.
I mean, you knew what that was.
Why is everything so different now? Why is everyone acting so fucking normal? I've been trying to come up with a satisfying conclusion to this video, but the thing I resent the most is all the catchphrases and cliches they've come up with. The new normal, alone together. If I hear these unprecedented times one more fucking time, I swear to God I will go outside and get a stranger to cough on me. Sometimes I feel like I have to pretend to know the answers, so I...
Slow down, Ashley. If I had to hear somebody say these unprecedented times one more time, I swear to God I'll go outside and get a stranger to cough on me. That's a pretty yikes joke. She's not trying to seriously like make light of the situation, I don't think, but that's kind of what comes off, especially when the basis of the joke is kind of about the actual ways in which people are coping by using these phrases and stuff like that. Like, these are unprecedented times. You know, her frustration with these things, I can understand, and people's emotions will come off, will happen as they do. At the same time, I just feel like it feels a bit insensitive. The joke itself, the kind of disregard for the ways in which life has become this very unidealistic thing that it kind of has always been, and only took one massive crisis to really reveal. And the fact that things are not going to go back to normal, you know? It just feels like it's kind of like she's finding more frustration that the situation isn't what she wants it to be. And in the face of the way that so many other people are being affected by this, I can see how that comes off as insensitive. Okay. Janelle says, well, this new Netflix original looks terrible. This one really feels like main character syndrome. A lot of people are saying that. You know, it's very much centered on her personal experience of you know, her feelings not being, her needs not being met, her desires not being met, the life that she pictured she would have in New York City, is being derailed by a global crisis. It kind of comes off as quite main character syndrome to a lot of people when it's like, in the midst of all this, you choose to talk about how New York City isn't as fun for you as you wanted it to be, rather than the fact that literally hundreds of thousands of people are dying around you. So it's frustrating and it's tough because at the same time, you know, it's not like she's saying that these people's lives are not worth being discussed or anything. And she's also not a scholar, and it's not necessarily her job to talk about these things. She's using the medium as an outlet to talk about her own feelings. And those, you know, people's own feelings are selfish. People's own feelings are kind of confusing and pointless. But it's not illegitimate for her to feel, you know, let down by things. It's not illegitimate for her to feel like this was a letdown for her personal life. It's just, especially because it's like, you know, you have 3 million subs on your channel, and sort of the way that you're sort of joking about different things and portraying different things around you is kind of comes off pretty self-centered. For a lot of people. Pretty offensive. I understand what she was trying to go for with this video, but the whole thing just didn't land, says Sandra. Jenny says, as someone who had a family member get COVID, this came off as insensitive and not taking things seriously. A lot of people who have been personally affected by this crisis, whether it's people around them catching the disease, whether it's their personal livelihood being compromised severely, feel similarly to that. If a worker made that joke, says Mars Junkie Girl, it would be fine gallows humor IMO. When it's someone upper middle class, it hits different. Yeah, when it's somebody who, you know, comes from LA and has this profitable career in YouTubing and beauty and fashion and all these different things, and they're complaining about the price of rent and making jokes about wanting to be coughed on because people keep using catchphrases. It's like, who are you to make these kinds of jokes? Who are you to say these kinds of things? Like, there are people who are literally having their lives upended by this, and you're being unaffected by it. You are in a safer class. So to make these jokes about these things happening in New York that are very unfortunate to you, it's like, yeah, no kidding. But you think, if you think you have it bad, you know, there's obviously people who have it way worse. And I don't think she would deny that. It's just that at points, it's like it just doesn't seem like it's very much sunk in for her what this has costed to other people. It's hard for her to fathom because she's still talking about, oh, this is the new, like, this isn't the new normal. Why is everybody acting like this is so normal? Like, if you want to see people not acting like this is normal, just go visit a hospital. Go volunteer at a hospital or something. Go volunteer, get donating, you know? And you will see that it's not the new normal, you know? That it's not normal, I should say. Michaela says, while I can understand how everyone reacts to things differently, and that's okay, this situation just isn't something that should be romanticized and lightheartedly joked about. Yeah, you know, we're gonna find a way to get through it, and I dream of this ideal place outside. Well, like, there's not really an ideal place, you know, first of all, but, like, second of all, it's like, you're kind of, it's almost like you're telling this sort of young adult coming of age story about your own life in the midst of this situation that is very much not about you. I think the most pressing, like the most obvious thing is like, this is not your journal. Like, this is a public platform which you monetized and made into a career for yourself, which, you know, literally millions of people are watching. And so that has a very different, that should be treated with a very different type of approach than, you know, simply venting to a friend or writing in a journal, you know? Like, ultimately, you can't write in a journal if a million people are reading it. It's a different thing. Everything you mentioned about life elsewhere, the word you're looking for is Europe. Damon, Europe is not paradise. People are dying in Europe too. This person says, I remember watching this video yesterday and it deeply affecting me, and not for the right reasons. This is where, you know, what I mean about sensitivity. Actually, I love your content, the work you put in, and a lot of the things you stand for are the things I truly resonate with. But this video just makes me feel some sort of way. I had my grandpa pass away a day before my 16th birthday due to the virus, and I wasn't in a good place. Still am not in one. But I do appreciate the fact that my parents haven't lost their jobs, haven't undergone a pay cut, and we can still afford luxuries. I haven't met anyone except for my family who live with me in 5 months, and I'm sure it's been so much worse for so many people. But the least we can do is acknowledge our privilege and help the world in small ways through something that is feasible for us. The cinematography of this video is phenomenal, and the aesthetics, the personal aspect is truly beautiful. Having said this, I think as an influencer, you do have some responsibility with what you put out there. Celebrating birthdays in person, not wearing masks, and not staying at home are very ignorant things. Of course, you can share what you are going through, but please be mindful of the audience and general population while doing the same. Heart emoji. I love you and wish you nothing but the best, but this video left a sour taste in my mouth. Please do re-evaluate a lot of the things you mentioned in this video. Also, I get that a lot of the things I've written have already been said, but I just wanted to share my 2 cents. Harini, I feel so bad for what you're going through, and I thought that this was very well put, and I'm glad that other people are coming together to comfort her. You know, she's not saying something so outrageous. She's saying, you know, be more mindful of the things that you're saying to other people, especially people that aren't like close with you, like your audience. You know, people support you and love you as a content creator and are engaged happily in this you know, that word that people use to make fun of K-pop fans. Something relationship. You guys know the word. When you're engaged in that kind of relationship with a creator, you kind of hope for them to be a bit more sensitive about these issues that, you know, affect so many people. And so when they come off as if they don't really, okay, you can get your butt over here. When people come off as if, you know, they feel as if the crisis sort of starts and ends with what they're going through, it can be quite frustrating for people who follow these creators. You know, they want that sort of acknowledgement. Oh, God. Parasocial relationship, that's the term. But especially when there are situations where there are these massive socio-political ramifications, these massive amounts of literal deaths, to sort of only sort of talk about that and be sort of dismissive of the crisis as well, comes out very self-centered and insensitive to people. That's not me saying that like that's what I think that Ashley is doing or what she wants to do or that she feels that way. I'm sure she cares very much, but on the other hand, it kind of comes off as if she's not, you know, prioritizing the right things. It's funny how you think the pandemic is ending when we didn't even get to the worst part of it. Yeah, the whole thing where she kind of talks about the pandemic as if it sort of comes to this end in July is a bit frustrating. It surely is, because this pandemic is not going to end for a while. I don't know if it's going to end until 2022. And even then, you know, there's probably going to be ramifications for many years. Yonks. She said post-pandemic. That's pretty straight. That's pretty yikes. Okay, so I'm gonna stop reading the comments there, and I'll just close this sort of segment of the live stream by just sort of giving my own personal perspective. First of all, as a person who lives in New York City, and just in general, as a much smaller content creator, someone who's a slightly older and can relate to what she's feeling and what she's going through, and might have, you know, maybe some small traces of advice that could be beneficial to her and others who, you know, might be watching as well. So in New York City, there is very much a reality wherein the city is incredibly divided, because on one hand, the city is the center of commerce around the world, the center of business, the center of, it's sort of a melting pot of cultures, to use an overused phrase. It is a place where all these different cultures combine and all these different people find opportunities for work and stuff like that. And as a result, you have these massive establishments, massive companies based here, massive buildings and housing and all these other things. There's so much riches here as well, so much wealth here. On the other hand, there are people that have lived here for a long time. There are people who live here, whose reality is that despite all these beautiful things existing in New York City, the majority of people, I would say, do not see any benefit from that. They might be able to go visit one of these fancy coffee shops and ice cream shops from time to time, but first of all, when they go there, they're looked down upon, often because of their race. But because they don't have a lot of money, their working conditions mean that they're constantly working, and the economic conditions that surround them within this capitalist system mean that they're not going to make a lot of money, because they're going to be constantly exploited. They're losing their housing. because housing is constantly being destroyed in favor of building more, chain restaurants and expensive housing. People are constantly cutting budget for things that are essential services for people in New York City, as is the case around the country. And so there's a reality that most of the people that live in New York City are suffering greatly and have been suffering greatly. And then there are people who come here and see the city as a place for diversion, a place for cultural exchange and business opportunity, and merely as that. And when the city does not provide them with that, they become very dismissive of it. They want to leave. They talk badly about it. They talk badly about the train stations and things like that. But many of these people do not then actually do something to help these people around them, to change the things that they don't like, or to even recognize that many of the things that they don't like pale in comparison to the suffering of the people that are around them, which they could be using their time and energy to help. Now, everybody's struggle is valid. So it doesn't matter if you have a lot of money or no money. It doesn't matter if you're white or if you're a marginalized racial group. It doesn't matter who you are. You're going to have your own struggles, oftentimes delving with things that are emotional and mental and spiritual. You're going to have your own traumas. You're going to have your own economic problems even. You're going to have stresses and all these different things that are created by societies and the people around you. And so your own struggles are valid no matter who you are. Your struggles are not invalid just because there are people who are dealing with more tragedy, who have less money. However, it doesn't give you a right to prioritize your problems over the problems of others. And many people who come here solely prioritize their own qualms, not even just straight up issues, but qualms with the city, rather than prioritize the massive injustices that are happening around them. It's like they put their blinders onto it and they only see their own perspective of what's wrong, what's not up to snuff for them. A collectivist solution is needed on many fronts. Collectivist work is needed on many fronts to try to fight against and do some sort of reparation and on behalf of the massive amounts of things that have gone wrong here in this city for people of color, for poor people, etc., etc. And so if you're going to come here, people have an expectation that you're going to give a shit. People have an expectation that you're going to make an effort to care about and to look after the people around you, the people that already live here, the people that make your life what it is, because they're working at those coffee shops, they're working at those Starbucks, they're working at those McDonald's, they're doing plumbing, they're doing this essential work. They're the ones who take care of you when you're sick. They're the ones that take care of you when you're injured. They're the ones that build the infrastructure that you live in. And yet, when it comes to addressing their problems, you go mums, there's nothing that you want to say about it. There's nothing that you do about it. There's not enough effort on your behalf. It can be a donation. It can be elevating your platform. These are pretty simple things to do that I've done. It can be volunteer work. These are more important things, I think, is actually trying to somehow, offer your labor, your services to the people around you, especially if you're in a position where you don't need every last drop of your labor to count for something monetary, because you don't have to worry about eating the next day. You don't have to worry about feeding your kids and putting a roof over your head, which many of the people around you who make your life what it is do have to worry about. So all this is to say that someone like Ashley from Bestdressed is probably somebody with great intentions, somebody who I think has made many great videos, somebody who I think is probably a very caring person to her friends and who does have genuine concerns about larger socio-political issues. I know that there's a lot of controversy over different things that she's done. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm not qualified to talk about that. But if there's something that I will say, first and foremost, is that if she's going to be here in New York City, I would hope that she would spend time and energy helping the people around her and noticing and doing something to point out the injustices around her, because there's more to New York City than just expensive coffee. There's more to New York City than cat cafes. There's more to New York City than tourist attractions. This is a real city that people actually have to live in. So with that being said, I don't know if she personally volunteers all of her time aside from her videos to doing these things. And if she does and she has receipts of that, she should share them. She should show that she's putting in that work. She should show that she's not just studying and in the process of learning about things, and look, I'm learning about all these different things, but then using the things that she learns about to create some sort of positive change. But I also don't necessarily, again, burden her with the responsibility of not only about not talking about her own problems, but just in general having to solve these issues. She's just one tiny thousandth of a piece of a puzzle. I would like her to do her best, but the issue is not that she's not saving New York City. I think the issue that people have is that when you put out a video like this, people feel like it's insensitive, because when you're talking about something that is in reality a global crisis that affects millions of people, millions upon millions of people in devastating ways, globally and in the city that you live in and that you're idealizing, what you have to realize is that as a person with a large platform, you want to care about these people. They're the people that put food on your table. They're the people that watch you and support you and show you love when you need that love. So when you make a video like this and you talk about your problems, you got to be really careful to you have to be really careful to talk about your problems in a way that doesn't make it seem like you don't have a disregard or a blatant unawareness of other people's problems. You don't want to joke about things that are very tragic, serious situations. You don't want to come off as if you're being flippant about very serious issues and how you go out and socialize even when it might not be the right thing to do, and how you joke about things, and how you view the people around you and film them and depict them and talk about them. So it's more a matter of just sensitivity and understanding that it's not just about tone, but it's about communication. When you're sitting in the middle of one of the most, I can't stress this enough, it's one of the most tragic, devastating, and revealing global crises you can imagine. So in the middle of this crisis, what is it that you, a person with a massive platform and a person who is in a great situation financially, in terms of friendships, it seems like, in terms of stability, in terms of all these different things, what is it that you want to address? What is it that you want to do with these privileges? What is it that you want to do with this platform and this ability for outreach and all these different things? What is it that you want to do with it? Do you want to use it just to vent about your own problems without really regarding the others' problems? Do you want to use it to make positive change? What do you want to do? I would hope it's the latter. And I understand that you making a video venting about your own feelings doesn't negate that you might be trying to help other people. But everything that you're doing counts when you're in the public eye. It's one thing, as many people have said here, to talk about your own feelings, no matter how selfish they are. We all have very, very selfish feelings. None of us are perfect people. Many of us have all these different concerns and problems and all these different problematic things to say. But it's better that you say them to somebody who cares about you in the privacy that you are given, rather than put it forth in a video so as to communicate to millions of people these ideas that might in turn invalidate what they're going through, make them feel bad, etc., etc. So overall, to Ashley and to others who support her, first of all, to her supporters, let people criticize her. There's a lot of people that go around and attack people for criticizing their faves, and this is a delicate balance to strike, because sometimes people can scrutinize too much, people can be too mean, people can be too hateful, etc., etc., when calmer measures are needed. But at the same time, you have to understand people are really fucking suffering. People are really going through it, and if people have these criticisms that they're articulating quite well of this person, it does not benefit you, it does not benefit them, and it does not benefit the person being criticized that you love to simply shut down that criticism and say it's hate. And to Ashley, you are not a bad person. You're not a good person. None of us are good or bad people. But a good friend of mine, Gray, they once said to me, good is not something that you are, it's something that you do. And the question really is, how are the things that you're doing good or bad? And how can you make them better? That's what we're here to learn from. We're all learning from you. You know, your ability to react to criticism and to make yourself a better person in the face of these things can have an amazing impact on several other people, especially people who care about you. But most importantly, it can have a great impact on you. It can lead to you being more happy, to you being more fulfilled, to you living a better life, you know? So take that criticism in stride, you know? Suffer when you have to suffer, and vent in the privacy of your own home, and get through that. But at the end of the day, understand that people have these very valid criticisms of you because you have potentially hurt them in this way. And that's the last that I have to say about that.